August 25th meeting of the Voter Outreach Registration Committee. Where the commissioners, I'm Simon Shamoon, a member of the committee. The commissioners, starting with my left, please introduce themselves.
John Flateau, Case County Democrat Commissioner.
Alan Sutton, Democrat.
We don't have anything by way of formal agenda today. We have some topics that we're addressing. First off, we'll get into that, so we can get an overview of our voter outreach registration projects, that some things that go on, and what we're planning for the upcoming cycle and so on like that.
So what you have before you are the draft outreach staff procedures. We wanted tomorrow at 2 p.m. Myself, Executive Management, Beth Basella, Voter Registration, and Debbie Lybell of Election Day Operations will be hosting a meeting where the boroughs will, at the general office, where they'll be sending their outreach coordinators here, just so we ensure that we're all on the same page in terms of outreach, how they should be conducting outreach, how they should be tracking. So this is a draft procedures. We'll discuss it in detail with the borough tomorrow for their feedback. But essentially, we want to ensure that the general office is informed in advance of any scheduled participation from the borough. So we want to make sure that executive management and the borough managers are informed, and the commissioners are informed before the staff are committing to attending any events. They are required to fill out an event recruitment checklist that provides us with all the logistics in terms of event details, event information. We also want our outreach team, to be more proactive in terms of taking photos at each of the events if possible, so we could promote it on our Facebook and social media pages, just to see the additional, just so we can engage with the public and let them know that we're conducting these outreach events citywide. We are asking that we have Marco Sierra in the Bronx office, he's taking some additional design classes, but what we will be doing moving forward is creating flyers for events to let people know that, hey, Bronxites, Brooklynites, we will be at this public library from 12 to 4. Please come out. And hopefully our partners in government, like Campaign Finance Board and others, can help spread the word and encourage people to attend these events. One of the things that we really will be stressing to them are metrics. So to please keep track of how many completed voter registration forms we received, how many completed poll worker applications were received as well. We have a code, HPWA, for tracking purposes when we do our recruitment, our poll worker recruitment, so we can gauge how successful our outreach is from our events. We are urging them to please wear their shirts that we've purchased, uniform shirts with the board's logo, as well as outreach staff on the shirt themselves, so they're easily identified. We have asked that it's a requirement that all events are staffed by bipartisan teams. In an effort to limit overtime costs, we ask that the events not exceed 2 staff members unless it's a large-scale event that would require more than 2 staff members. Overtime must be approved in advance. And we also want them to be a little bit more proactive in terms of their outreach. So working with the community boards. We know during the summer, most of the community boards have meetings, a lot of them, during the summer. So we're asking that now begin reaching out to community boards, work with the mayor's community affairs unit, get a list of street events and permits where they've been requested, so that way we can kind of get a sense of throughout the year what large-scale events are planned, so we can get tables at those block parties or fairs. Merchant associations, bids. It was also recommended that they look at community calendars on the local access TV, whether it's Brooklyn News 12, Bronx News 12, or New York 1. You can look at their community calendars. We also, it was also decided at the managers meeting that each borough will receive a yearly allocation of their collateral materials. So what you have before you, the pen and the bracelet, essentially each borough will receive a year's worth of materials for them to manage and distribute throughout the year. And if they need additional resources, then they have to present to us why they've gone beyond the original allocation. But we think it's a way to brand and have our name out there at any of these street events, so they should distribute them. We also are encouraging them to use this on more, going back to like a grassroots effort, where as they schedule and attend an event, to mark it with it indicated on their borough map. So that way everyone can see, and they themselves, when they're trying to schedule events, they can see, well, we've been doing events in a certain area of the borough. We need to distribute that better. So I felt that having it on a map would make it easier for them to identify. And that's pretty much the procedures, the draft procedures. One other thing that we could do, that we did in 2010, when we were doing the original outreach, was for each scheduled event, we would I would reach out to the area elected official. So if we're in fact doing an event down at Battery Park, then we would reach out to the city council member, the assembly member, the senator, and to let them know we are in fact attending an event in your district, or hosting an event in your district, and encourage them to attend as well. Just so that way there's the awareness that the board is proactively conducting these events as we do them.
Yeah, I had a question. You said that you wanted to limit it to 2 members. Is there any limit on the number of sites we can go to on a particular day?
No, I don't think there's a limit in terms
I
of fees.
think the 2 members she's talking about is just the 2 people that they're gonna directly work with and oversee, but not limiting the amount of people that are gonna go out, because that all depends on the event.
Right.
No, I'm saying, let's say there's multiple events on the day. Can we
Right,
do
no,
multiple?
I don't think, it was just 2 per, because I said that the recommendation in an effort to limit overtime costs. So if we're doing a street event, we don't necessarily have to have 6 participants at that. They should try to keep it to 2, unless it's a large scale event.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that-
if it is a
yeah.
large scale event, and don't forget that along with the voter reg forms that go out, the poll worker applications go out as well. So we're trying to recruit the poll workers and also do the voter registration forms.
But there is no limit, and we also have, in addition, if any of the boroughs need it, and we'll make that clear to them tomorrow, in the event that they need supplemental staff, we have the general office, we have teams here as well that can assist. So if there's an event that you don't have coverage for and you need the general office to provide backup, we can do so.
There's been some concern that, like in Manhattan, that we've only been to one particular section of Manhattan.
Yes.
Is there any way that you can guide them?
Yes, so by proactively, because it depends, sometimes events, because we have relationships with certain groups where our attendance is requested, and that's fantastic, but we also want to be proactive in our outreach, and that's why the sense of uniformity we think is great, so that they can start with the community boards and the bids, and definitely the mayor's community affairs unit would be helpful too, because of
But I
the-
wanted you to keep on top of the fact that if you see somebody going only to one particular section, then
Okay,
at least alert me anyway, so I can take
I
action.
alerted yesterday.
okay,
It's not that we want to stop that event from happening, because you don't. I mean, if we're getting a request, we want to meet that request. But I did bring it to the attention of Manhattan, and I said the last 5 events have been specifically in this area. And I know, especially now in the summer, and I think Valerie also has a link here for them to go on. There's so many events that are taking place. We could, especially on the weekends, I know it's gonna be overtime, but when it comes to voter registration, if we're pulling in those voter registrations, then it's worth it.
Right.
So, they need to be proactive, and they need to be looking up where these events are. And she has given them the tools to look this up and to reach out to certain organizations to find out where the events are taking place.
Also,
Are we considering flex time in terms of staff deployment?
We don't do flex.
Is there, what's the reason why we don't?
It is a union issue. We tried to do that, I believe, when were we full force at one time with, no, it wasn't 2010, it was
So
after
that would be a
2010.
conversation that would have to take place
With the union, yes, we were trying
Before.
to
the agency.
have them like come in on certain dates or come in later on in the afternoon.
Right.
And we were contacted by the union, so we went back to, you know, the regular scheduled hours. And if there was an event and it was overtime, then it was overtime, we had to pay the overtime.
So I'd just like to note the Dawn Sandow, Deputy Executive Director, has joined us.
Thank
I almost forgot.
And I'll also suggest to the team tomorrow, what I found, some of the lessons learned and what I found was successful during 2010, which was our largest outreach effort, was preparing a monthly calendar. So a lot of these events, so try to map it out. And if you look during the week, if you're visiting, if you have 2 street events during the week, and maybe during the afternoon you were invited to a school, then you could kind of map it all out, and it just helps to look at the big picture on a monthly basis. And some of the larger events through the Mayor's Community Affairs Unit, you also need advance time because you'd need approval to set up a table. So a lot of these things can't be done last minute.
That form is very helpful. I don't know if they see
Yes.
it, they have it, but.
Is it mainly left to the boroughs to brief or otherwise train the employees that are going out, or are these employees usually from a registration?
It's usually from the voter reg unit. However, it depends, like, that's why Valerie was saying we have HAVA staff here. Like, now, everybody's in full gear with the election that's coming up. Although voter reg at this point is gonna be slowing down because we've met our deadline. A lot of those people in voter reg, I know in the boroughs, are then deployed elsewhere because we're packing up supply cards. So that's where our HAVA team comes in. So if they cannot send them out, our HAVA team is trained and, they're ready, willing,
You
and
referenced a meeting, it sounded like something's happening tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yes.
What's that?
It's a meeting with the outreach leads, the citywide outreach leads.
I would just say, raise the issue of, and this may already be happening, if there is a frequently asked questions type of checklist card that can be included, deadlines for registering. What happens when you change your registration? What happens when you switch parties, move, things like that. Maybe there's something we can pull off our website that has a lot of answers to simple questions that I'm sure come up a lot.
A lot of people don't realize that when they switch their voter registration, they don't realize that it doesn't take effect. If somebody goes from Democrat to Republican, they're not a Republican until the day after the election that's coming up, and a lot of people don't realize that. And they don't realize about the deadlines. We had a major issue this week. And I'm sure that it's, in some instances, going to hurt us on primary day, but we received stacks of registrations last week on Thursday and Friday, and yes, they just hit the cutoff. However, when we went through all the registrations sent to us, they were from way back in February, May, April, and we didn't receive them. The date, yes. And we didn't receive them until last week, right before the cutoff. So yes, they're making the cutoff. However, flipping through them, because I was going through each one, there's people that didn't sign the registration form, or there's people that left out information. So now, by the time, our boroughs receive it the day we get it. And now they're gonna go through it. Once they go through it, they're gonna have to send a letter out to these voters. By the time we get that information back, they're not gonna make the book. And these people are gonna be saying, well, I registered in April, well, I registered in
How many
February.
people do you think are in this category?
We got hundreds of, I don't know how many, I was just flipping through to see, and I came across a few where they were missing information. So maybe out of the maybe 400 or 500 that we received, we might have 15 or 20. I really can't say because I didn't go.
Course of action, do they get a letter?
They receive a letter, but once the borough gets
Saying that
it,
the form is incomplete and they still need to fill something out.
yes, and it tells them exactly what is incomplete and, you know, to send back the information. So by the time this process is done, those people are not gonna be in the boat. We reached out to the state board, and we brought it to their attention, and this was something that, we were very much on top of here. Our voter registration, department usually calls the organizations that we deal with here to make sure, because a lot of them like to do this big registration drive, hold on to these registrations, and then send them in. And then we're getting them the last minute. So here, we're able to reach out to them and tell them, make copies, hold up the copies, but send us in the forms so we get them in right away. But these came from the state board. We did reach out to the state board, and a lot of them are agency, so they can't tell us who it is. We can only give them the code that we have. And a lot of them came from DMV, and they were change of addresses. So, you know, it's gonna be an issue for us on primary day. I'm sure we're gonna get calls from.
Is that a big number that comes to us from DMV? Or, you know, proportionally
This was,
speaking?
really, it's not, but because they held on to them, you know, it's about this high, you know, it's a huge stack, but, you know, you have registrations dating back to February. People filled out registrations in February, they're gonna be very upset if their name's not in the book. And of course, we're gonna receive calls here, when in actuality, we only got them last week.
Let's hope
So
that
that's
the
something that
letters at
I
least go
want
out
to.
sooner rather than later, or of course before.
They're out already, the borough's received all their paperwork. and they're
Does
out.
the state have a coordinator like the mayor's office just designated one agency to supervise their agency reg? Is there a one stop at the state level that
I
could maybe?
believe there is, however, we called the co-directors, and that's who we spoke with, to let them know.
That we would like them to expedite handing those forms off to our
We
agency
don't know,
before, with more lead time.
Yes.
That's,
but we can't say that it's the state board that was holding them. We don't know if DMV held them and then send them to the state board, or if that other agency held on to them and then decided to send them to the state board. Usually when the state board receives them, we get them right away. So I'm assuming that these are the agencies that held on to them. They said that they were gonna address it. They were going to send a letter, and I believe they were gonna make some phone calls, and, you know, I'm sure Mr. Ryan.
so normally we get the forms from the state board on a flow basis, not a last minute bulk drop on the city.
Yeah, no, we get them on a regular basis. It's nothing in this.
But it was just this
amount.
last bunch that
Yes.
came in just before the deadline, and now that folks in that stack are not gonna make the deadline, you're saying?
Everybody that came in, they came in just at the deadline, so as you're aware, we stayed open the weekend. So we were able to process this. So we were able to process, however, in that stack, I did come across a few as I was flipping
Still needing
through
more.
that we needed more information on. So those people are not gonna make the poll books. They're not gonna.
Catherine Grace from the League of Women Voters. Why do not we use, is there a policy against using email to notify voters that they're missing pieces of information? It would come
We
back to.
don't have email addresses, although now, which we're
Collecting
really
them.
happy, well, we're happy to, you know, to say that we worked with the state board, and the state board now has the email address on the voter registration form. And we do capture those email addresses, however, we cannot force anyone to put their email address in.
No, but if
What
you
they
have
can
the.
do is when they are looking, and what they do is when they do look up the voter, if they have the voter registration, it's not a new registration form. and it's a change of address, or we do have them in the system and we have an email address, we can very well email them. But those emails are very far and few between that we
But
have.
if there was, but could we start emailing those that
No,
we have?
we do. What I'm saying is if
But
we
not wait
have,
for the mail to go through to say you're missing your signature so they could respond faster?
the deadline was Friday. We received them on Thursday. When they come here, there was, I would say, probably about 500. That gets broken down and sent to the boroughs. When the boroughs receive it, the boroughs have to check each one. Of course, you know what the registration process is. It gets scanned. It goes to one person who then puts the information in. Then it goes to quality and another person reviews it. We have an automatic generation of letters. And if there is an email on there or there is a telephone number, our staff, yes, can do that.
Will they-
If we have it.
Will they do it?
What
In
I'm
the
saying
future,
is,
if-
yes,
in
our
the
staff
in the
will do
future
it.
for-
It's not in the future, they do it now. We have staff that reach out to, if there's a telephone number and they need to reach someone because they can't understand maybe what's written on the registration form, they will pick up the phone, they will call that person. I'm not saying that every employee goes that extra mile, but they are told that they have to, and I'm sure a majority of them do that.
Because all I hear is that you're sending out letters that take a while to get to and to be received and then.
Yes, we have
But
to
if
send
you
out a
have-
letter, I don't think you're understanding, so
Okay.
I'm just gonna say it like kind of slow. If
That
we
wasn't
have the
nice.
email, no, I'm gonna
That
repeat
was
it
not nice.
slowly
Thank you.
because I don't think you're understanding. If we have the email and we have the telephone, but majority of people, we don't have that. So if we don't have it,
Okay.
we
And
have to send the
To be
letter.
in fairness to my intelligence, you did not speak of it at the beginning of this process.
That's why I said I'll repeat
Okay.
it.
I'd say, taking a big picture look at this, we should try to reach voters generally speaking any way we can. I think more and more email addresses are being gathered, phone numbers. Sometimes people are reluctant to read emails, sometimes they do. And so that might be a larger conversation about how people are communicating. I'm sure the election law has some limitations on official communications and things like that. But I think some common sense would dictate that if there's information missing, sounds like in this instance, maybe it wouldn't have made a difference, even if assuming there was no. But sometimes, pick up the phone or shoot an email, and it's a good idea.
I just want to say, if it is a signature, okay, we have to send them out another registration form. Majority of times when they do pick up the phone, if there is a telephone number or an email address, it's mostly because maybe they're unclear of the spelling of the name or they're unclear of the birth date. But in any event, a lot of these things, they have to receive another form and it has to come back to us, especially if it's a signature or if it's somebody's last 4 digits of their social.
Let's move on.
How many employees do we have on our HAVA team? Prox.
10, I
10.
believe it's 10.
And that's sort of the flexible team that can go
Temps,
anywhere
yeah.
in the city to staff an event if needed.
That's including temps.
Okay.
Now, are all 5 boroughs participating?
Yes,
We'll have representatives here.
yes.
I am concerned about general office approval. Who's going to be doing that and how's that process going to happen? Because I do know, having had an outreach team in the Bronx for the last year or so, that sometimes they do happen last minute. Somebody will contact me or Commissioner Perez and say, hey, we're having this event, can you send someone over? We'll just call the deputies, make sure it's done, and they'll send someone out. They got to sit around and wait for somebody downtown to get the email, get it approved, and get it back. That could be an issue.
We could make an adjustment in, I think that was really more in terms of awareness of overtime, so that way the staff, that way executive management knows in advance who's requesting overtime. We could change it
The
and have
email, well, I think a lot of that too, are you talking about the email notification to exec about approval?
it, yeah, the general.
A lot of times we receive the email, and we've noticed that there are times where the borough is sending out more than what's needed, so we will cut down on the staff. If it's a last minute event and the commissioners want to approve it, I don't you know, I think for last minute events, it's fine. And we should be copied on it so that we know, so that we can keep track. We try to report this in our annual report, and we have Voter Reg that has a program that puts all our events in, so that when we do our annual report, we have all the events that we did citywide listed. So just for informational purposes, if you're just on them.
Would you like me to add commissioner?
Please.
Okay. I will.
For last
Because
minute.
we get a review, what we do, Commissioner Perez and I get this would be a weekly email with the events that are coming up for the week in case we're around or in case we want to
Okay.
stop by or what's going on in the borough.
Okay.
The new registration stands, they've been dispatched.
Should not say it before today.
We have them all out, the new registration.
The displays?
Yeah.
Yes.
We have not received the as per, I think it was a commissioner's directive that we not limit it just to city council members. We want to expand it to all elected officials. So we're awaiting the delivery from Vanguard for that additional, it was an order of additional 500 displays. The libraries and the post offices have already been, which were required, have already been dispatched. The drivers from each of the boroughs have already made the deliveries.
Do
I
we
don't
have
think
extra
they're
ones?
complete.
Okay, they're making the deliveries.
And do we have extra ones in case they're requested by the
Yes,
board?
we have a few on site, but they will all be sent to each. Once we have the
Each
official.
borough will get
Each borough, they'll get their
an allotment.
inventory, yeah. Once the vendor has provided once they've produced the additional 500. There was an issue with quality control because the first 500, which were required for libraries and post offices, were worded a certain way, so they didn't want there to be a confusion with the elected official inventory.
I think
So
it's
they did
packaged
separate.
differently
Yeah.
as well.
It was a sort of, they're producing them separately. So they're in the midst of production for the ones for elected officials and community-based organizations. So hopefully we'll have that soon. And each borough
Do we
will
have
get
a
their
date
inventory.
yet on that delivery?
I think they were working on some of the stuff for election days, so from what I gather, I want to say Linda said we should probably be receiving it the first week of September.
So we'll be out way in advance of the presidential.
Oh, yeah,
primary,
yeah,
so-
for sure.
Okay.
I can confirm the date, but from what I remember.
Question
it's
about
first.
this topic?
Yes, I was just wondering, Valerie, does that also include the agencies, the covered agencies, Local Law 29? Will they receive any of
They
those?
receive their own, they receive a certain amount from our voter reg department already, but we didn't have displays, no.
That's the
Not-
question, are the displays being made available to agencies?
I don't think that was.
No, that wasn't approved, just the normal amount of registrations that we send to the agencies already.
Right.
Okay, I know the Campaign Finance Board requested some.
They are on the list for the community, the outreach. You're listed as one of the community-based organizations, or you're,
There
so
may be a
our partner,
concern
so-
about-
right.
Number of.
That is
Yeah.
offices,
Back, yeah, CFP, that's what you said, CFP.
My understanding is
How
the
many are-
mayor's Office of Operations is coordinating the distribution now and tracking it, inventory control for all the city agencies under local law 29, is that?
Yes, I believe you're correct, but we don't have anything they're tracking,
Right.
but we're not getting that information.
So our process is we only have to deliver now to the mayor's Office of Operations a bulk supply, and then they're responsible for getting all those voter reg forms out to the city agencies and back
Correct.
to us
And
through
track.
the mayor's office of, that's my understanding from it.
I think the mayor's
the
office of
discussion.
operation is trying to track so that they know how many
Which
they're
agencies are
giving, how many
producing?
are coming back, because we give out so many registrations.
It's in the
forms.
tens of thousands, right, that we turn over to the city?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
It's not what we get back.
And I assume they're aware of deadlines still, when these forms have to get back to us.
I think that would be important to
That's on our
make
website.
sure.
We have it hanging
I would be a
on.
little more proactive.
As far
Maybe
as
maybe some formal communication so that they know
the
what the
mayor's office?
deadlines are.
You're talking about the mayor's office of operations?
Yeah,
The mayor's office of operations knows that they know.
the deadlines.
I hope.
Yes.
And their community, okay. So that we don't have the situation you just described with the state board, where we get
Right.
huge amounts of forms in bulk at the last minute, and voters think they registered, and
Right, with the.
and they miss the deadline here. Because
They
the
didn't-
perception will
They
be
didn't, they didn't, I don't want
that
you to
this
think that they
agency,
missed the deadline. We got it right before the
the
deadline.
day before, you said.
So we got, these people will be in, however, the people that did not fill
Still-
out the application correctly may not make it in the book. I don't want to mislead you, maybe I.
I heard
Okay.
you loud and clear.
Yeah, so they're in, but I think the way that we've been proactive in the past is trying to reach out to the organizations that we normally work with, that we know of, that usually do voter registration
Annual
drives
voter
that
reg.
come in, and, you know, Beth will usually reach out and call and say, you know, this is the deadline, if you're doing any drives, make sure you get them into us, especially in a presidential, because that's when the drives really start.
Could we be provided with a list of who those, quote, regular
Sure.
civic groups are
Yeah.
that do voter reg?
Mm-hmm.
So we know, have some sense, and also a sense of balance as well. I'd be curious to know how many of them, for example, are Brooklyn-based. Being a Brooklyn chauvinist, I apologize. I don't make any apologies, I take that remark back. Poll, could we go to poll worker recruitment? Because you said that's a part of the outreach effort. Any sense on?
Any event that the staff go out, they also go to reg doubles as a poll worker recruitment opportunity too. So
A lot of
they're,
times they
We
go to
bring out
job
they take them
fairs,
out.
correct?
Yes.
That's one of their
Very-
big spots, they hit the job fairs.
We have a flyer that we give out with the voter reg form. We did at one time, we tried to use the tablets that we have our AD monitors use to go out for them to do it on the tablet. But that kind of went, a lot of people were very leery about putting in their information on the tablet. So,
So it's either those hard copy form or they go to the website. As someone who's interested in becoming.
yeah, so now they can go to edw.com and they can go register and put their email in. In order for them to register, they have to put in all their information, they have to put in their email address, so that comes back into our system, and that means we're able to then reach out to them as well. EDW is really, really growing, we're up to 14,000.
Could you elaborate?
Election day worker.
EDW? Oh,
Election day worker.
Election day worker,
okay.
yeah. We have about 14,000.
and we found that those 14,000, we
They
know-
come through our website?
Yes,
We have a
visiting that
specific- yeah,
website, electiondayworker.com.
electiondayworker.com.
And those emails, they were, they went through the quality check essentially, because there's a validation process. So versus sometimes when we do outreach events, we request emails, they're not necessarily, we find that there's a lot of fails, they're not exactly accurate email addresses, but when you get voters or potential poll workers that go in and go through electiondayworker.com, they have to then subscribe and then opt in by having their email address validated. They receive a confirmation email. So all of those 14,000 are probably the most, we can ensure that we have the accurate
That's
information.
this year so far, that's
To date, yeah.
that 14,000 number?
To date, yeah.
I think a lot of the emails that we did have in our system before EDW came into play, that we did receive maybe through our poll worker apps or even sometimes our voter reg forms. A lot of them got kicked back. I mean, we tried using it at one point and there was a lot that came back that were not valid email addresses. I think our system, didn't something happen with our
Yeah,
system?
we were blocked, at one point we were blocked from like constant contact because it was the amount of spams, was all the kickbacks. So because the email addresses weren't all accurate.
We have to use an outside agency, right, to send out mass emails? We don't have the capability of doing that here with
We use
IT.
an
We
outside.
use an outside.
Here's another question.
Just quickly, what does the 14,000 represent?
Individuals who have opted into the electiondayworker.com portal.
Okay, but they are not necessarily converted to poll workers.
They're people who are now in your
Can we
list.
just see them
Correct.
stand up and
No, I thought
identify
it was.
yourself?
Have they all
I'm
get?
sorry, Kate Doran, League of Women Voters, I'm also a poll worker. The 14,000 represents people who have visited and registered, and so you have information about them,
Correct.
but they're not necessarily being converted to poll workers.
Right.
Not all of
Not
them.
all of them.
Okay,
Just the ones that come in and get trained and pass the test.
okay. But you reach out to them and try to encourage them to do that?
Yes. Of those that, yes.
Do you have a number of the 14,000, how many you
No, we
translate?
don't, no. But we probably will after this election. You know, this is new,
Okay,
so we can't give you any statistics on something we really haven't used yet. But I guess we can, after this election, take a look and see how many of the people that signed up actually were notified, came in, took the training, passed the test, and were put to work. So we can do that after this election. I don't think the primary would be best to base it on because it is such a small election and we did combine. So I am assuming that the majority of workers will be county workers, although in some areas where we do have vacancies, we will be using BOE. But maybe for the general, we'll be able to pull that.
okay.
Yeah.
So they have to respond. They're notified that there's a training available, but they have to volunteer to show up, do the training, take and pass the test.
Right, once they sign up in EDW, like Valerie said, their email address is verified. But then that goes into a queue in each borough. So
I was
each
gonna
borough,
ask that
yeah,
question, is it distributed
yes,
to the boroughs,
yes,
that 14,000?
yes.
And then the borough operation, as they're doing their training, they'll contact these folks to see if they're interested in coming to a training. If they pass the test, then they could wind up as a poll worker.
Correct. We're hoping that by next year, because we're also trying to put something into that would, I think, speed up the process, and it's something that's probably gonna come before all the commissioners, but it's something for district leaders as well to use. And so that county workers, then we can also put county worker information in there, which would enable us then to have the district leaders verify their poll workers through the system. If they don't have a computer, they can come in like they usually do now with their forms, and they could look in the system and work with the person that's assigned to them as to who they want to assign to which poll sites. They would be able to then sign up for training online, so there won't be, any more notices that have to go out. They'll be able to choose their training. They'll be able to see whether they passed or failed the test. They'll be able to see when the checks, at the end, after the 2 elections, when the checks are going out. What else, Val? There's a few other things.
If someone fails the test, are they able to take it at least one more time?
Yes. Yes.
CUNY, full disclosure, I'm a CUNY professor, and I noticed on our home page, there is something about election day worker recruitment. So how, if a CUNY student or worker, it goes into that website, what happens to that information? Does it go back through electiondayworker.com, or how is that process?
If they
It's
were,
on your website, the CUNY
I
website?
believe so, yeah, on our
it was, that was part of the.
recruitment,
Right, it was part of the partnership with Jay Hershington in an effort, I think I think at the libraries, there's like a link as well at CUNY campuses on their computers to link back to us, but it just brings you back to our BOE page.
So that
election day.
electiondayworker.com,
Right.
we're fed into
Yes.
that. Okay.
Sure.
Hi, it's Talia Werber from Citizens Union. I was just wondering what the board's thinking is about potentially splitting the shifts for poll workers. I know that's a little outside the purview of this conversation, but just from conversations I've had with people who are potentially interested, when they found out about the length of the shift, that diminished their interest. So I wonder if that could get more qualified candidates.
Yeah,
We have done a pilot in a couple of polling sites previously. Feedback was generally positive about the concept. In fact, we have Kate and Catherine here, who are coordinators from one of the sites.
PS 316, right?
321?
321.
Yes, 321.
And so the concept is there. I think it's something that we should, generally speaking, look to evaluate and try to expand on. But to kind of convert it into that system is a monumental task. You're doubling or more the number of workers. It's been one way for so long. And so what Commissioner Flateau and I are looking to do this cycle, this general election, is expand the pilot somewhat. We can maybe get a little more data and a little more feedback and see how things go. Using the feedback and pros and cons of what we learned. And so it is on our minds. I do believe it is a good idea, and generally speaking, and I think if we can implement it the right way, it's something that we should look to do. Common sense dictates that a lot of people can work a half a day or just don't want to work a full day. And so I think that's a way to get more poll workers, generally speaking. So we're looking at it. It's something that we're actively looking at. We're actually yeah.
I know Ms. Sandow also has some thoughts on that. We've had some.
Yes, we have, we're looking to use, what we're looking at right now is some research that we've done for the presidential election as well as the governor's election to look at spikes in times during the day. I think that there is talk, we are looking to see if we can hire people to come in during those times, during those spike hours, but not necessarily lose the people already in the poll site.
Extra fresh bodies, and it also
Yes.
enables people
At
like
certain
school
times.
teachers who get off at 3, 4 o'clock
Especially
to
for the
help us during our
presidential.
mad rush hours.
Yeah.
Wouldn't disqualify them because they have other commitments and stuff.
So especially for the presidential, we're concerned, of course, but we don't want to take out poll workers and have someone come in, and we would just rather backfill where we feel those spike times are for the presidential election. We are doing another pilot where, I don't know if you've go to Disneyland or Great Adventure, and sometimes you're handed a card as you go through, and you hand that card at the end of the ride. That really is to figure out how long you waited on the line. That's something that we're looking to do hopefully for this November, but it's not a definite. It is a definite for the presidential primary. That's going to help us see which poll sites where there's lines, how long somebody waited, and I think that we're gonna base on where we put these extra people for the presidential election on that research that we are doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should I stand up?
Sure.
LWV, you need to be in rotation. Okay, all you other organizations out there, she's sucking the oxygen.
So Dawn, how would you deploy these people who are coming in at peak times?
Oh, I just explained that. The
Well, you said you
research that
would-
we were doing?
Yeah, but,
With the
no, I'm saying, let's just imagine that you decide that from 8 AM or from 7 AM till 9:30 is a peak time. And you get all these people and you.
Well, it's gonna be different in different poll sites, that's what the research is for.
Well, what do you think, what is one idea?
Let's not stray too much.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
we need to wait till we get
We
to.
have to do the research, it's gonna be different in
Okay.
different poll sites.
I mean,
It's not
I
gonna be
can't
the
see it
same.
working unless there are multiple poll books, because the
I'll
lines.
just remind everybody, this is a
Um,
voter registration
yeah.
outreach committee.
Okay, okay.
I've heard
Okay.
about this idea once before, and I don't know much else about it, so
Okay.
maybe this is something reserved better for a general meeting or another committee.
It's like,
Because a lot of times we need to
Yes,
have a
exactly.
conversation in the appropriate forum.
I thought this was the forum, I'm sorry. I'm sitting.
For a lot of it. But I think it's a great idea, but I don't know much about it, I don't know that anybody else does. So
No,
great
it's
idea.
just, yeah.
So, let's keep that in mind. Yes, sir.
Outreach questions?
Hello. Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. My name is Jackson Chin. I'm with Latino Justice, ProDef. This is my first hearing. My first meeting, sorry, yes. I wanted to bring to your attention the issue of, there are two issues. First, the issue of poll sites changing and complaints that we've gotten where people didn't get any sufficient notice. And I think under the election law, you're supposed to let voters know at 30, 60 days in advance of the election that their poll site has actually changed. So I'm wondering, I know that the Board of Elections has been doing something diligent on creating more accessibility for the disabled, which is admirable, but there's a certain confusion that is also created for people who are used to certain polling sites and they don't seem to know that there has been a change. So I'm just asking, how do you notify them? And if so, through the postcards, apparently the text may not indicate that there's a change. It looks like your normal text reminding you to go vote. Secondly,
So can I just,
oh yes.
so in terms of the, we have a legal requirement to send out an information notice to
Yes.
all registered voters the first week in August. So, and this year, what we did was there were two types. It was a bold version and then a regular version. The bold version was, and I can get a copy for you, prominently highlighted to say your poll site has changed with a large indication, larger font, hopefully encouraging people to keep that piece, read that piece of mail and keep that piece of mail as well. We can only send that one mailing one time throughout the year because the cost associated with it, it's almost $2 million. But if in fact, after that poll site notice, if there's a poll site change, they would in fact receive a notice as well in the form of a postcard that's handled for internally from our offices.
So you're saying the first notice is a letter?
The first notice is a booklet. It's a booklet in the covered languages according to their particular EDAD
So would the
essentially.
poll site information be on the face of the booklet, or is
It would be
within several pages within inside?
No, it would be actually on the face of it.
Okay.
It's an enlarged voter card that has not only the poll site
cut out.
information,
Okay.
it has the
Great.
accessible poll site entrance, their EDAD.
So I would love to see a copy.
Sure,
But
sure.
also I see that,
Did you receive yours?
I got a card,
Did you get a
my poll
booklet?
site hasn't
Booklet.
Did you
changed.
get a booklet?
No.
Okay, we can, you can, after I can
And
take
I'm
your
pretty good at
information.
checking my mail with this important stuff. The other thing is I see you have these poll site lists, and if I may recommend, you might want to bold the actual sites that actually have been changed. I mean, is it that difficult to do? I mean, you probably have a limited number of polling sites that you, right? That you could just
It's not
indicate.
that
Oh.
simple, because sometimes one ED at one site goes to a different site as opposed to a second ED from the original site. So it's not just site A becomes site B
Right.
most of the time. So, and that's a general list of whole sites, not specific to any voter.
Mhm. So this is really for staff to use, not for the
Well,
public?
it's for anybody. to
Anyone can
use,
use it, but in
it's
terms
whole
of,
sites for
it's
many
not,
things,
it's
so.
not geared to that one individual voter. What we encourage our voters to do,
Mhm.
and your organization can partner with us to help spread the word, the awareness of our poll site locator. Because by visiting our poll site locator online, and using your mobile phone, you not
No, I
only,
understand. These are nice changes, but of course, for the digital divide issues, you have a lot of people who cannot
well,
access.
a person who can't
Yeah,
access
that phone
can
bank.
call the phone bank, and we have trained operators who will essentially give them that same information.
All I'm suggesting is some creative out-of-the-box solutions, and this doesn't seem to be that
Right, but it
difficult to
can, in
do
fact, I
with-
get your point, but it
with
can.
legends or some, way of, I mean, there are ways to inform the public. I don't think it's happening in an efficacious manner. Second question is, which was raised from listening to you, is that you have this information now being collected, email addresses, people's phone numbers, and as you and I know, this Board of Elections data on voters is sold to, all sorts of data places that collect information. Do you have a policy in respect to limiting the data that is being sold to these data brokers, such as email addresses. I wouldn't want someone to know my email address. And so I can understand some reluctance if you are asking people to disclose further private information beyond your normal set of data. But do you have a policy with respect to the privacy of this data, or is it not yet?
The voter registration form is public knowledge, and anybody can come in and pull up anybody's voter registration.
Yeah, but I'm not worried about the individual pulling it up. I'm worried about you selling a digital
We don't sell.
storage.
We don't sell.
Oh, is that right?
No, we don't sell. I
So-
mean, we get requested information.
Mhm.
If it's requested electronically, we send it electronically.
Well, that's not,
If
isn't that the
someone-
same thing? Sending electronic information?
But we're not charging anyone for that.
All right,
If
but you're
someone asks-
disclosing private information, basically, including emails
No, I
and phone
understand. So I
numbers?
think
A
what-
voter registration form, by law, it's public information. There are people that have requested that and they need to have specific reasons that they don't want their information out there. I think it's domestic violence victims. Otherwise, anyone can walk into any one of our borough offices and they could pull up a voter registration form.
But you
The only
understand the
thing that
difference
is
between walking in and
redacted
pulling out
from
one
the
document
form-
and sending electronic files of
What we
thousands
do
of voters?
redact
Very
on the
big
form,
difference.
so that you know when someone does come in to request it, the last 4 digits of the social security and or if it's the driver ID number, we have to redact that information.
So you're redacting the last 4 digits of the social security number?
Yes. And
Whereas
also
other databases already released
also
the first,
voter-
I mean,
The motor
this is-
vehicle ID number as well.
right. But I'm bringing to your attention ID fraud, as now you've mentioned redacting 4
Yes.
social
yeah.
security numbers.
By election, that's according to election law, yes, we have to redact that.
Is that city law or state law?
It's a state law.
Because there's some sort of a problem there, because attorneys and others, they have social security numbers disclosed. And anyway, this is
You're an attorney, you're representing a legal defense organization. I think it would be appropriate for us to put you in touch with our
It's a
general
civil
counsel,
rights
our
question.
lawyers.
Yeah, it's a civil rights question.
Right, who could give you specific answers to those questions.
I'd love to.
I hear you loud and clear though about privacy in relation to release of, you said telephone numbers,
Well, email
emails,
addresses,
social
telephone
security
numbers, what have you.
I don't.
And doing it electronically, that's even
And
simpler,
whether it's
quicker.
being sold.
A total bulk amount of data being released to anyone. who
Stephen
requests.
Richmond is our general counsel. I think we'd be perhaps doing.
Well, all I'm trying to make a point is if you're
Facilitate.
collecting people's email addresses and phone numbers,
Okay, on
if
your
I knew
early-
that you were gonna give that away for free, I wouldn't give you that information to begin with. So
Okay, on
if
your
the public
earlier
knew
point-
that, this would not be encouraging that type of information to be
Yeah, they
collected.
don't have to put that information.
It's optional, it's an optional field.
It is
Yeah, I think it said, does it say
It's an
optional on
optional
the
field.
form?
It is.
Maybe the other question is a box that says, please do not disclose to anyone. I mean, this might be the way to
And
address
that's,
it.
that's state law.
Instead of the word
right? Doesn't-
optional.
State election law controls that
But-
voter reg form and what information is asked for.
Yes.
And
That's
they
right.
actually approve the forms throughout the entire
I'll have to look
state.
up the form. I haven't looked at it lately, so I will
I know
get to
that.
that question.
Well,
Thank you.
to your earlier point, I can email you the, essentially the screenshot of the mailer, the normal version and the bold. And then if you give me your name and address, we can have our vendor track your mail because we can see that, in fact, it was mailed out.
Well,
So
the
you have
last
to contact
question
your
is,
postmaster.
if you have a poll site change,
Mhm.
do you put up a big notice at the old poll site? So that people see that they should be going to a new address, or is that not done?
That depends on when the poll site was changed.
What does that mean?
Well, if the poll site was changed a year earlier, no, we don't do that. If the poll site is changed within 2 to 3 weeks before an election, yes, we do. Even though a poll site change notice goes out, we usually do put up a sign, or we will have door clerks standing there alerting people where the new poll site is.
So for the current primary that's coming up, you will have this in place?
In those
Depends when the-
circumstances, when
In
it's
those
last
minute.
circumstances, if they're last minute poll site changes, yes, if they are last minute.
And how do you define last minute?
If there's an emergency, if we find out, like JFK High School, there was a gas leak, there was an explosion, we know we're not gonna be able to use it, That's an emergency, it's the last minute, we're 3 weeks away from an election, we will have someone there. If we are in fact moving that site, I'm just using it as an example, yes, that is the case. If the poll site was moved 6 months ago, that wasn't an emergency change. People did get their poll site change notice. They then did get the mailer the first week of August on top of the poll site change notice. So no, we do not do that at that point.
Did the board have any reports or studies or complaints of people complaining that they couldn't vote because they could not find their polling sites? Because I've constantly, well, I mean, do you collect that information? I see other organizations saying it's a constant problem, but
Sure,
does
it's
the
a-
board recognize it as a problem?
Obviously, it's an ongoing problem, and I think part of it, it's not that notices aren't going out. A lot of times, people don't read their mail very carefully. That doesn't mean that we can't, like you said earlier, think of maybe some more creative ways to inform voters of a poll site change. It's obviously a very serious issue, and it's probably the top complaint I get out in the field from voters. And now I think poll sites are changing more than ever due to accessibility issues and so on. So it's something, it's duly noted, it's acknowledged, and I think as a committee, maybe we can think of some ideas on how to improve that in a fiscally responsible way.
Thank you,
I
Commissioner.
think we do notify people, it's prominently on the booklet. As the commissioner said, though, a lot of people, including myself, don't always read our mail thoroughly. You see something in the Board of Elections, you assume you know what it's gonna say, and then you don't really look at it. There's only so much we could do to get the public to read their mail. And I've been involved with other groups, and you can send out 10 different notices, and people still get things confused. So, I mean, as far as we're concerned, we will do whatever we can to make sure that people are aware where they should vote. But, it's like the old saying, you only need a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
But I think you acknowledge that there may be some design issues that we as a
I
committee
think
can
it's
work
well
with
done.
you.
Take a look at it when you get a chance. It's well designed. It says it prominently right on the folder. Like I said, I don't necessarily read everything I get. I'm sure other people don't either. You look at it and you think you know what it's going to say, and you just put it down. But
And if they didn't pay attention to it on election day and they do get to the poll site and it happens to be closed, they can call our 800 number, they can look us up online, there's the poll site locator, which will have the up-to-date address of where they should be voting.
And most of the time, and I hate to diminish it, but more often than not, it's a convenience issue, because it's not often that a poll site is moved entirely. A lot of times, voters from a particular site are moved for overcrowding reasons and so on. That's the primary reason. And so more often than not, the poll site, the original poll site, is still open to other voters.
You're saying
So
the precinct numbers
the
are,
clerk there will
Over.
direct the voter to the other poll site. And of course, that's not what we want. But I think that's more usual than, say, PS 123 not being a poll site any longer.
Because of
Coincidentally,
disability
that is what
access.
happened to me as a voter. But I'd say more often than not, part of the voters, a portion of the voters get moved from the poll site for, because the number of voters has increased.
thank you for the explanation.
Thank you so much. If there's nothing else, I think we should wrap up this meeting. Next meeting to be determined.
Any other comments from the public? Comments, questions before we close
Outreach
out?
related. Outreach and voter registration
One more
related,
question
please.
there.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Onita Coward, Mayors, NYC Votes for the New York City Campaign Finance Board. Good to see everyone. I just wanted to share that we have a VAC meeting this evening at 5:30. You're going to be there. And that we are, again, working with all of our partners throughout the city as we prepare for National Voter Registration Day, which is on September 22nd. At this point, we have over 100 events that are going to be, voter drives that are going to be happening throughout the city. And we would really appreciate if the HAVA team could assist us in getting bodies out to various events. I'd like to thank the Board of Elections because they go with us every, yeah, well, beyond that, but even with our naturalization and swearing in ceremonies that are every month, sometimes twice a month, they hang in there with us, and at the last swearing in ceremony, we registered 232 people. So it was a good day. Now, I will say we're going to send out invitations for September 21st. It's a kickoff for National Voter Registration Day, and it will be a panel discussion at Lincoln Center coupled with performances on voting rights and the impact of the immigrant vote in the 2016 elections. So all of our partners will be involved, and we hope that the Board of Elections will also be there as well. So that's it for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later. Thank you to all the representatives that stopped in here today. As I said, the next voter outreach will take place in time, the time will be determined. We'll keep you posted.
Continue to participate. We thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
The price of liberty is eternal vigilance.